When it comes to NFL content here on YouTube, draft grades are far from a new concept. You know, some people talk about their favorite draft classes and their least favorite draft classes. Someone might have a channel that's specifically dedicated to one team and only focus on that team's draft class. Somebody, like I did last year, might talk about the 8 divisions and break all of their draft grades up into 8 videos. Somebody else might just talk about the draft in its entirety in one video and then move on. All of those are very valid and very effective ways of getting your message across and talking about the NFL draft. However, because I did not make nearly as much pre-draft content as I wanted to, because being a college student, watching film, trying to have a social life, trying to make videos, and not driving yourself crazy is not exactly a great recipe for success, I kind of failed with that. So I decided, hey, let's make 32 videos throughout the summer talking about the 32 draft classes, give each team their own designated video to justify all that work we did pre-draft. And initially I was going to do that throughout the month of May and then move on. That fell through the cracks. So we bled into June. Didn't get it done in June. So we bled into July, and here we sit on July 30th, and I am just barely halfway done because life is hectic. So because of that, we are going to bleed once again into the month of August and hopefully get these done before the season starts. In fact, we will get these done before the season starts. But before we get into our next team, whoever that may be, I do just want to say real quick, keep in mind, I'm not a professional. I am just a 21-year-old college kid who likes to spend the free time he has watching tape. So, you know, if my opinion doesn't line up with your GM's or line up with yours, I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm not saying I'm better than your GM or that I know better than your GM. I just had a different takeaway, and people seem to like when I give my opinions about this stuff on the internet, so I'm going to continue doing it because it's fun, and it helps me get my points across, right? It's a lot of fun. I enjoy making these videos. So, without further ado, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. It's not often that I am straight up angered by a draft class, but Atlanta, you did it. You have royally, in my opinion, fucked up. Now, there is one pick that I'm going to speak very highly of, and then a couple other picks that I'll be like, you know, they did what they did. But the top of this draft, I mean, look, Atlanta was a team I had I still have such high expectations for. It's a really good roster. You've got some great offensive talent, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You go out and add Darnell Mooney, who's a really solid complement to London. You get Kirk Cousins, who, when healthy, is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the sport. You have a good offensive line. You lose Keith Smith, but you do replace him with Robert Burns, who I'm a fan of. Obviously, I got to get my fullback mention in there. You have some exciting pieces on defense. You have Jesse Bates, who's one of the best safeties in football. You have A.J. Terrell, who's one of the more underrated corners in football at this point. You have Grady Jarrett, who's awesome. David Onyemata is pretty good. You have some young guys that I like Arnold Ebiketie and Zach Harrison and Clark Phillips. And this draft was really their opportunity to just, like, solidify this roster. You had a top 10 pick. You could have added a huge player on defense or even another offensive playmaker and really just solidified this offense. And instead, they take Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback out of the University of Washington. Now, look, I'm going to say this up front because it is important. I did not like Penix, period. I was not a fan of Penix as a player. So this grade isn't just me saying, what are you doing? You're drafting a quarterback when you have a quarterback. That's part of it. The main reason for this F, because this is the lowest grade. This is, in my opinion, and the opinions of many others, I know I'm not exactly creative here, this is the single worst draft pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. The single worst. And it's because I don't think Michael Penix is a good quarterback at all. I watched 15 quarterbacks. Michael Penix was 7th on my board. I had Michael Penix graded lower than Spencer Rattler at a 3rd round grade on him. And I just don't see the appeal. I don't. I really don't. Like, I get the exciting stuff. He's got a big arm. And people are like, oh my God, big arm. And he's got a quick release. But you've got a guy who's going to be 24 as a rookie. He's torn his right ACL twice. His mechanics and footwork are horrific. I mean, not only are they bad in the pocket, but when the play breaks down, he's a ticking time bomb. Hips are as stiff as a board. He's addicted to big play hunting, which is going to get him in trouble. He thinks his arm is a lot better than it is. It's strong, but it's not nearly as strong as he likes to think it is sometimes. He's going to become infatuated with his first read and pre-snap reads, which is going to result in him very often staring down his first target. He can't anticipate. He's a statue in the pocket. You know, we talked about Hendon Hooker last year not moving in the pocket. Penix is just as bad. Absolutely just as bad. Has zero pocket presence, and he's not a creative runner. Like, yeah, he can move. He's not a creative runner. He's not a smart runner. This pick is so infuriating. Because, like, I'm glad they did it as a Bears fan, because it ended up in the Bears getting Rome Odunze, but he was right fucking there. He would have been such a better pick. And that's just the same school. You pair him with Drake London and with Darnell Mooney, that receiver core is unreal. And then you add in Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, who has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield pretty damn well. That gives Kirk a lot to work with. And I know, Kirk's old. You still just paid him like $200 million. Gave him a 4-year deal. Michael Penix is almost certainly not seeing the field before the end of that 4-year deal. He'll be 28. This isn't a Jordan Love situation. I've seen a lot of people try to say that, oh, they're taking the Packers route. They have their quarterback. He's good, but he's old, so they want to get insurance. This isn't that. Because if this was that, you take J.J. McCarthy. You take a quarterback who isn't already 24. If your quarterback that you're drafting right now is starting his first game at the age of 28, you have completely blundered your draft pick. You have thrown it in the trash. You have taken the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft, crumpled it up into a ball, thrown it in the trash can, lit it on fire, and then pissed it out while your boss watched you. That is what the Falcons and their general manager did this year with their first round pick. I'm so angry, I'm tripping over my words. I just don't understand the thought process. Now, because I don't want to just be a hater, even though I think I've already pretty much established myself as one here, he does have a big arm. He's got really good drive velocity. He's able to hit some tight window throws because of that. He's quick. He has a really quick release. Someone said it's like a cowboy drawing his gun in a shootout. Absolutely. He's able to layer some velocity with touch. Pretty solid accuracy downfield. He's good enough in the short game. He has glimpses of solid play while throwing off platform and on bootlegs, but like I already said, his mechanics on those plays are shit. He sees the field at a pretty decent level, but he does like to lock onto his first read. Like, he can see it, he just ignores it. That's how it feels, at least. He's willing to hang in the pocket and take a tough hit, but part of me is not fully convinced that that's not just because he can't move out of the pocket. He's fantastic at diagnosing mismatches pre-snap, but when he finds one, no matter what happens, that is where the ball is going. No matter what. He could find a mismatch pre-snap, and then the receiver could fall flat on his face. I'm sure he'd still throw the ball at him. And he can run, you know, he has above average speed as a runner, but he's not creative as a runner. I've seen people compare this guy to a lefty Dak Prescott. I think that's incredibly disrespectful to Dak. He's Tim Tebow, but not college Tim Tebow, not the good Tim Tebow that won the Heisman and was Superman. NFL Tim Tebow, who sucked and was out of the league within 5 years. This is not a good quarterback. This is not a good football player. This is not someone you take in the top 10 of the NFL draft, and you sure as fuck don't take them in the top 10 of the NFL draft when you have a quarterback that you just paid $200 million. It makes zero sense. The Jordan Love argument, the whole we're going to sit him for a couple years, does not apply here. He will be almost 30. He will be 28 years old by the time you see him on the field, if that's the case. 27 at minimum. That is a wasted draft pick, an absolute blunder by the Atlanta Falcons, and they should be ashamed of themselves. Now, that being said, because I don't hate Michael Penix the person, I would love to be wrong. I would love for, you know, Kirk to play 2 years, win the Falcons a Super Bowl, retire, and then Penix to take over and be a god. I would love nothing more, because I want to be wrong, because I don't want this young man's future to be as grim as I think it's going to be in this very moment, because he doesn't seem like a bad person. You know, there are worse people that deserve worse fates than what I think Michael Penix is going to end up with, and that makes me sad. But because he got drafted by a team that is going to wait to play him, it's tough. So I really can't get behind this pick. I say that a lot in these videos. I can't get behind the pick. Not only can I not get behind this pick, I fucking despise it. I think it's terrible. But on a much lighter note, they took one of my least favorite players in the class in the first round, and then turned it around and took arguably my favorite player in the class. It was between him and Austin Booker. in Rook Arororo, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. I love Rook. Rook was my 4th ranked interior defensive lineman. 3rd, if you call Darius Robinson an edge. I personally didn't. Had an early 2nd round grade on him. You take him here at the top of the 2nd. I think that is a very, very valid place to take him. I've seen a lot of people give them shit for trading up to take him over a guy like Jerzon Newton. Jerzon Newton had an injury that at the time people were unsure if he would be able to play this year. And they were unsure if he would be able to move as quickly as he had, which is a big selling point of his game. I can't remember the exact injury. I talked about it at length in my Commanders draft grades video if you want to go check that out. But I love the Rook pick. I love Rook. I think he's an awesome football player. I think at worst, you're getting somebody who's like a Shelby Harris, who I know that's not a sexy name. I know that's not a big exciting name, but Shelby Harris is a damn good football player. There's a lot of teams that would like to have Shelby Harris on their defensive line over the guys they currently have. At best, there's a lot of Justin Madubuike in this guy's name, or in this guy's game, excuse me. And I'm not just saying that because they both have these big, long, kind of funny sounding last names. It's because he's really fucking good. I'm saying fuck a lot in this video. Thankfully, I'm not monetized by YouTube yet, so it doesn't matter. But there's your way too late warning that I guess I'm going to say fuck a lot. But looking at what Rook does well, has a sturdy frame, really good length, and doesn't get bullied despite his lack of size at 6'4", 294. And I'm talking about when he's playing like a pure nose situation, or a pure nose position rather, which he did a little bit at Clemson. That's obviously not going to happen at Atlanta. He's going to be more of, you know, the 3-4 end, 4-eye right away. Kind of like, you know, probably play him over Zach Harrison. Eventually replace Grady Jarrett. It's probably the idea. But he's a plus athlete with good lateral quickness. Very high energy player with a motor that always runs hot. Great play strength, really good anchor. Eye discipline, gap discipline, and overall technique and run defense are outstanding. He's a phenomenal run defender. Sets a really strong edge when asked to do so. Possesses a ton of pop and power at the point of attack, Good overall bend for someone who weighs almost 300 pounds. His go-to moves being swipes and rips pair with really good lateral quickness for a solid baseline as a pass rusher. He's a versatile player who can line up all across the defensive line, which is one of the reasons why he reminds me a lot of Beaks, because that is what Justin Madubuike is known for. He's a 3-tech that can line up a little bit of everywhere. They played him at 3-tech, they played him at nose. There were times where he was playing edge rusher in a 3-4. And he's a high floor player who, at worst, will be an outstanding rotational run defender. Shelby Harris, like I said. Now, on the flip side of things, his first step is a little inconsistent, but it's not because he lacks athletic tools. It's just a timing thing. I think that's something you can teach. You know, referencing my Bears again, you look at a guy like Javon Dexter. Coming out of Florida, he had the worst first step I think anyone has ever seen because he would stand straight up off the ball. Now, his first step still isn't perfect, but it has greatly improved after a year in the NFL. I think Rook Arororo can absolutely follow suit and do something very similar. He still requires development as a pass rusher, but he gets to learn from Grady Jarrett. Who better to teach you to rush the passer as a defensive tackle than Grady fucking Jarrett? And he needs to work on converting his speed into power with bull rush a little bit more consistently. It's there. It's just a matter of doing it more consistently, as I said. So, like I said, very Justin Madubuike-esque, where he's going to come in the league right away as a really good run defender, has the tools to be a really good pass rusher. Just about the development, I think he's got great people in place to help him develop. Like I said, Grady Jarrett is probably the best teacher he could possibly have. So I adore this pick. I think this is one of the more underrated picks in the draft. Like I said, a lot of people have been shitting on it because they took him over Johnny Newton. But I think Rook's an outstanding player. At an early 2nd round grade on him. I really contemplated putting a 1st round grade on him. Like I said, one of my favorite players in this class. And I don't think any team in this draft had a more bipolar start to this draft than Atlanta, going Penix and then Rook Arororo. By the way, most fun name to say in the history of ever. Rook Arororo. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. He's going to be a stud in the NFL. Can't wait to see him develop. Then in the 3rd round, they take Braylon Trice once again out of UW. And I gave them a B+ for this primarily because I just thought there were better players on the board at this position that fit what Atlanta does a little bit better. Now, obviously, their evaluations were different than mine, but you take him at 374. Guys that were still on the board, the big 3 that stand out to me are Jonah Ellis, Adisa Isaac, and my boy Austin Booker. I know Austin Booker's kind of like the hot take, whatever. Not as many people were as high on Austin Booker as I was. I fully understand that. But every team that took an edge rusher outside of Laiatu Latu, Jared Verse, and Dallas Turner got knocked for taking an edge rusher over Austin Booker. So Atlanta, it's not unfair treatment. It's just how I've been doing this. But looking at what Braylon Trice brings to the board, the way I see it, he's somebody that's going to be like a mid-tier second edge rusher. Like, you look at edge rushers, I'm a comic book nerd, so I like to use the Batman and Robin analogy. You know, you've got your Batmans, which are your true alphas, your TJ Watts, your Myles Garrett's, your Max Crosby's, your Nick Bosa's, guys like that. You have your Robins, who are really, really good second edge rushers, and some of them may even have the ability to go on and be better than Batman, right? Kind of like the whole Nightwing storyline if you're into DC Comics, where Nightwing becomes the better version of Batman. He's everything that Batman wants for Robin and wants Robin to be. He's the better person because he handles his trauma and whatnot better. But, you know, guys like Alex Highsmith in Pittsburgh, or Zadarius Smith in Cleveland, or I guess whichever one of Mac and Joey Bosa. I guess I would probably say Joey Bosa at this point, because Mac, I think, is the better player. But, you know, guys that, when paired with a Batman, a true alpha, are going to be insane. Like, they're going to be awesome complements. They're probably going to be more productive than they should be. I think Will Anderson this year is the perfect example of like the Robin into Nightwing analogy, because they just added Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter is someone who is an alpha, a Batman. All this to say, Braylon Trice is an Alfred. He's somebody who I don't think is ever going to be the guy, but he's going to serve a damn important role, right? There is no Batman and Robin without Alfred. Alfred takes care of them. He's the one who raised Batman. He's the one who keeps them in check. He's their personal therapist. He's their beacon of advice and hope, right? That is what Braylon Trice is. He is your Alfred, your mid-tier secondary edge rusher. All of that nerd shit to say. He's fine. He's going to serve a role, and I think he's going to serve it well. Good example of what I think Braylon Trice is going to be is a Frank Clark, where he's going to be a really good pass rusher, going to struggle against the run. So you look at Braylon Trice as a player, looking at my notes here, relatively explosive mover who's really good at accelerating quickly, combines burst, length, and frame density to generate respectable raw power, energetic short area mover with stellar lateral twitch and foot speed, able to widen tackles and manipulate them with power, flashes ankle flexion, which allows him to slip through interior gaps on stunts with rip moves, possesses a good arsenal of pass rushing moves, able to stack moves with violent heavy hands, capable of stacking elaborate combos like double swipes, rips, and swims, has a great understanding of counters and possesses the instincts to effectively use them. High motor rusher, proves to be a thorn in the side of quarterbacks who like to improvise, able to quickly close in on ball carriers with pursuit speed that borders on elite. And he has a violent approach to stacking and shedding with a balance of decent upper and lower body strength. However, he's not going to be the most efficient stacker and shedder, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then we get to the weaknesses, and his length, hip flexibility, and ankle flexion. While there's flashes of all that, they fall short of elite, right? You want to see a little bit more there. Well, in the places where you can see more. Obviously, his arms aren't going to grow any longer, and his ankle flexion is probably where it's going to be for his career, but I digress. He struggles to attack the corner due to that lack of bend, and he's often going to pass up opportunities to do so, which to a certain point is a good thing, because obviously you want him to do what he's good at. But other times when there's a wide open corner and you think he can attack that, and he just passes it up to almost go into a double team, or, you know, attack the inside shoulder with a running back in the backfield, it can be a little infuriating. He lacks the hand strength to shed blocks consistently. There's times where he's going to outsmart himself as a rusher, passing up on easy opportunities to force his power. An inconsistent pad level creates issues with attempting to rush with power. So there's going to be times where he's going to fire off perfectly, use that power, get a really good bull rush. There's going to be more times than you'd like to see where he's going to stand straight up, try to do that, and it's just not going to work. His eye discipline is the big thing that's going to hurt him as a run defender. It's going to result in missed opportunities and overshooting angles against the run. And overall, he is a lackluster run defender, primarily due to that high pad level and his lackluster anchor due to a weaker lower body that are going to result in easy displacement. So as someone who really prioritizes edges that can both rush the passer and play the run, Braylon Trice isn't a guy I'm a huge fan of. But as a rotational edge rusher, which is what he's going to be in Atlanta probably for his entire career, you can do a lot worse, right? I think this is a really, really solid pickup here in the 3rd round. Again, I thought there were better players on the board, but it's not a pick I can get too mad at. And relative to what they did in the 1st round, it's a pretty good move. Then here, moving on to day 3 in the 4th round, the first player they take is Brandon Dorlus, the defensive end out of Oregon. He's somebody who is very interesting. He's a stereotypical tweener, 6'3", 283. I see him ideally as a 4-eye in this defense, as a rotational player. I guess technically you could try him on the edge. Reminds me a lot of Carl Brooks, who's currently in Green Bay, and I'm quite a big fan of. So Dorlus, I like, but again, this is another thing where if you want to take an interior defensive lineman, or if you want to take a defensive lineman or an edge rusher, I just thought there were better players on the board. But, you know, I'm not going to name off everybody again, because I'm sure you're sick of hearing names that I think are better than the guys you drafted at this point. But looking at what he does well, he's got a dense, compact frame with pretty good length, and he uses that length alongside an explosive first step to give him a nasty bull rush. He can slide across gaps with explosive lateral movement, uses that lateral agility very well with a quick swim move that he uses to win, one of his favorite go-to moves. He gains natural leverage due to his shorter stature, standing at only 6'3", and he's able to use that with his length to capitalize on long arm moves. He opens up by pushing the pocket with power and has a decent arsenal of counters to build off of that. He's able to chain Euro step moves with chop and club rip combos outside the tackles. He flashes a nasty push and pull move. He has heavy, accurate hands that allow him to displace blockers. He's a strong edge setter who can stack, re-anchor, and shed blockers pretty quickly. He's a handful in the run game with high energy and good play strength. He's a high motor rusher who consistently fights through contact and maintains leg drive, He's hyper aware of quarterback arm angles and possesses the ability to cut off passing windows with his longer arms. He's very versatile. He can line up anywhere from 2-eye to 7-tech. Like I said, I think he's more of like a 4-eye bordering on an edge rusher. We'll have to see how Atlanta plans to use him. However, on the flip side of things, he is a tweener, and his position is a total projection. At 6'3", 283, you either want to ask him to slim down a little bit, but you're going to sacrifice some of that power, or you want to ask him to gain a little bit of weight, which is going to sacrifice some of that agility and some of that movement. So we'll have to see what Atlanta plans to do. It's hard to imagine he stays at 6'3", 283 for his entire career, but maybe he does. He lacks elite explosiveness, hip flexibility, and high-level bend. His stiff hips make changing directions a struggle. He has a tendency to overcommit on gaps and then struggles to regain composure after whiffing. His high pad level at times will negatively impact power capacity. So like I said, he's got natural leverage, but there are times where he's going to stand straight up off the ball. Not a good thing. I'd like to see that lowered a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of players out there who have that issue, but if I'm mentioning with a player, just know that they do it more often than you'd like to see. We'll put it that way. When he's in space, he's not a great mover, and his lack of speed and flexibility make finishing sacks against quicker quarterbacks a struggle. So me personally, I would ask him to put on a little bit of weight, bulk up a little bit, and then just kick him inside. And I think down the line, him and Ruka could be a really, really nice D-end duo. Because obviously Grady Jarrett isn't getting any younger. And then that would allow you to kick Zach Harrison out to linebacker, obviously running a 3-4. I would really like that for them. But we'll have to see what the plan is. Maybe they could shut him down a little bit and have him just as a pure power rusher who's a good run defender to kind of complement Braylon Trice being the more pass rushing inclined of the two, so to speak. That's neither here nor there. We'll have to see what their plan is long term, but I do think Dorlus is a good player. He's going to be interesting to watch long term. As we move into the 5th round, we get to J.D. Bertrand out of Notre Dame. And Bertrand is one of the players that I did not get around to pre-draft. I had to watch post-draft, which, you know, in the little intro that I have for these draft grade videos for this month, where I talk about how I had a break in my schedule where a bunch of shit happened and I just wasn't able to record. That was kind of a blessing in disguise because I got to go back and watch guys like Bertrand, who I wasn't hip to before the draft. And I got to say, he was a fun player. My big issue with him is that I thought there were better linebackers on the board. Two big ones being Jeremiah Trotter and Tommy Eichenberg. They were Two of my top 5 linebackers in this class. I couldn't believe they fell as far as they did. Bertrand, if I were to go back and place him in my linebacker rankings, he would be top 10. Probably somewhere around the 7 to 8 range. I think I like... So my top 8, just real quick for reference: Junior Colson, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Edrin Cooper, Peyton Wilson, Tommy Eichenberg, Trevin Wallace, Cedric Gray, Jalen Ford. I think I like Gray and Ford more than him. I think him and Ford would have been pretty close. But that being said, taking a look at what Bertrand does well, what he brings to the table for Atlanta, he's good enough size, good strength for the position. Coming in at 6'1", 235 pounds, displays great pursuit of the football in open field, does a great job working around blocks to get to the ball carrier. He can quickly change directions in space as well as work cutback lanes to the ball. He's an effective blitzer off the edge, and he's pretty good at shooting gaps on the snap. Gets to the quarterback quickly as a pass rusher, always looking to strip the football. He's a capable zone coverage defender that can react to plays in front of him pretty well. He will attack blocks with a strong punch to stack and shed. He has a skill set that looks like he's going to be a great special teamer if all else fails at the next level. And of course, at Notre Dame, 3-year starter with plenty of experience. Now, that being said, he lacks the high-end speed and explosiveness that a lot of linebackers have nowadays. Faster ball carriers are going to outrun him in space. They're going to, take smart angles and be able to get around him. He's going to do his best work getting downhill or to the sideline rather than out in the open field. This is what bothers me a lot about Bertrand, and that's that he's going to leave his feet as a tackler pretty often, which is going to lead to whiffs. Can't stand a guy that can't tackle. Like, as a linebacker, I know we're in a passing league. Still, the number one thing you need to be able to do is tackle. And that's a big issue. Also, because he is a little bit smaller, being 6'1", 235, he is going to get overwhelmed by bigger and stronger offensive linemen. He's going to get uprooted or driven back on blocks. He's going to have a tough time disengaging with these bigger guys. A lot of his bigger plays come from shooting gaps unblocked, which there's value in for sure. He's going to struggle to run with receivers and tight ends and man coverage, and he's going to be 24 as a rookie. So, in other words, the way I see Bertrand is he is a worse, smaller Tommy Eichenberg, who was still on the board. Or he is a worse, roughly the same size, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who was still on the board. Good player. I like the compliment he brings to the linebacker room. Obviously, got a guy like Troy Anderson, who's a lot more athletic. I think Bertrand is someone you can kind of work up the depth chart, play him on special teams for the first year of his career or so, and then maybe slide him into that starting role. He's somebody that'll be fun to watch. I see why the Falcons liked him. I see the upside. I just think there were better guys on the board. But then again, it wasn't the best linebacker class, so I don't want to knock them too aggressively. If Bertrand was like the first linebacker off the board, we'd be having a way different conversation because I thought Junior Colson was unreal. But with Eichenberg and Trotter, I still think they're better, and I'm still scratching my head as to why they preferred Bertrand, but it's not the end of the world. This isn't the same as Penix, right? This isn't a Penix level pick. So it is what it is. And then we get into the 6th round. They made 3 picks here, starting out with Jace McClellan, the halfback out of Alabama. And McClellan is not somebody that I watch pre-draft. Once again, him, Washington, and Logue all have that in common. I'll just tell you that up front. But after going back and watching McClellan, he's fine. Solid play strength, can run through arm tackles, and isn't shy about initiating contact with bigger defenders. He has good leg drive to maximize yards after contact, which is going to help a lot with him running through those arm tackles. He has controlled and efficient feet when navigating through traffic between the tackles. He has good burst, able to get downhill pretty quickly. He's an effective zone runner with an effective first cut to transfer force upfield in an instant. So obviously, bringing in the guys from LA, Zach Robinson, who is now your offensive coordinator, rather, they're going to run a zone scheme. All your offensive linemen are best at blocking zone. He fits in that for sure. Really good patience. He's able to press the hole to help create leverage for engaged offensive linemen before, just putting his foot in the dirt and cutting upfield. And he's able to catch passes slightly away from his frame with soft, reliable hands. That being said, injury history is something worth noting. Tore his ACL in 2021. He doesn't display the ability to string together multiple short area cuts consistently. He's not somebody that has top end home run speed at the next level, and he's not going to have a lot of creativity as a runner. However, when you look at your running back room of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and now Jace McClellan, you're fine. You know, you're not sweating it. You're just getting another body in that running back room. He's just a nice change of pace back. He's somebody that maybe if you want to down the line trade Tyler Algier, you know, if somebody gets desperate for a running back, they offer you a 4th round pick or something. You have that flexibility now. If not, he's a good backup, solid depth player. The only reason I have this as an A-, not like an A, is just because I thought there were better running backs on the board. Again, another situation where, yeah, this guy's fine, but I would have taken X, Y, or Z. Mainly Dylan Laube, who I think would have added a different element to your running back room as a true pass catcher, a pure pass catcher. You know, you have the ability to do some fun stuff with him. He's somebody that can play out of the slot a little bit, even just a really flexible pass catching running back. I think he would have been a better pick here, but I can't fault them too much for taking Jace McClellan. So solid pick up there. And then the very next pick, they select Casey Washington, the wide receiver out of Illinois. And again, he's somebody that I didn't watch pre-draft, but, you know, solid frame, acceptable size, natural hands catcher who's able to pluck the ball out of thin air outside of his frame. Good body control, able to adjust on the sideline. He's got some yak capabilities. He's able to break through arm tackles and has enough long speed to do a little bit of damage after the catch. He can play bigger than his size and win tough contested catches. He's a willing blocker in the run game. He's able to absorb tough hits to make catches. He's got some special teams value. Shows a decent enough release package. Had a couple really clutch plays at Illinois. And he tested pretty okay. Now, on the other side, on tape, he's a lot less athletic than his testing would suggest, which isn't great, especially when it comes to, you know, changing directions and his overall agility. He lacks the suddenness to drop his weight and change directions, and creating natural separation as a route runner is going to be an issue as well. Meager production throughout most of his career outside of his final game in college. He was used mostly as a third receiver at Illinois and wasn't on the field a whole lot. Lacks value out of the slot, primarily someone you're going to want to play on the outside. Long stretches of tape where he's just not doing anything, really. And he's going to line up pretty upright, which is going to hurt his ability to, you know, kind of lean into his runs and get out of his stance quickly. So, not the worst player in the world, obviously. This is just another situation where, again, there were players that I would go to bat for that I think were better, or at the very least fit what Atlanta could have used, in my opinion, a little bit better. Ryan Flournoy out of Southeast Missouri State was a guy I really liked here. Brendan Rice was someone who, even though I wasn't huge on, I just thought was better. Taj Washington was someone I loved. I thought would have been an awesome slot option for them. Cornelius Johnson is someone else from Michigan that I thought is just better than Casey Washington at what he does. That being said, it's the 6th round. Just like McClellan, I thought there were guys that were better, but I can't get too upset about it. So it is what it is. Give him an A- there. And then finally, Zion Logue, the defensive tackle out of the University of Georgia. I don't see it. I don't see anything. Like, yeah, it's a 6th round pick, but he's just big, dude. Like, he is literally just big. There's no athleticism, no technique, no polish. He's just big. He's not even productive. He had 52 tackles on his career. He has a slow processor as a pass rusher. His pass rush plan is non-existent. His hand usage as a pass rusher is marginal at best. Doesn't have a lot of balance on the ground quite often. When it comes to, you know, reading blockers, not a lot of awareness there. Like, he's not going to make any plays outside of the tackles. He's not going to do well against double teams because his pad level's too high. So, like, you've got this 6'5", 314-pound defensive tackle who's obviously nose tackle, but you can't take on double teams. You know, like, he's got effort. You know, the kid's got heart. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't know. I don't see it. There were defensive tackles at this point in the draft that I will pound the table for. You know, here, this was, 6'1", 197. You had Christian Boyd, who was just a better nose tackle, went 2 picks later to the Saints. I'd be pissed off if I was a Falcons fan and the Saints got Boyd. Levi Drake Rodriguez, who went to the Vikings. When I went back and watched him, because I didn't watch him before the draft either, I liked what I saw. But the big one here, and this is another guy that I was higher on than apparently the NFL was, Leonard Taylor, who can be exactly this guy out of Miami. Had a 3rd round grade on him. He was still available. 6'3.5", 300 pounds, better pass rusher, smart player, good run defender, actually understands leverage. Like, I don't know, this just felt like, hey, this guy went to Georgia, we're in Atlanta, isn't that cool type of pick? So, I don't know, I can't get behind it. I don't love it. This is a pick that I'm going to give a lower grade than I normally would to a 6th rounder, just because there are multiple players that I will pound the table for at this position at this point in the draft. But, you know, as a whole, it's really hard to have a good draft when your first pick sucks. Like, point blank period. Atlanta, I feel bad for you. Love the Rook pick. Trice and Dorless are picks that I can get behind. Bertrand thought there were better players available. McClellan thought there were better players available. Washington thought there were better players available. Logue thought there were multiple players that I was a big fan of available. So I'm going to give them a D+. It just wasn't a great draft. I think Rook is going to be a staple of your defense long term. I think Penix we're going to look back at as one of the worst picks in the last decade, if not more. And then some of these other guys, I can see some contributors, but there's so much left on the table in this draft class. There really is. There are just so many players that just would have been better for Atlanta, point blank period. And it sucks to see that this is the route that Atlanta went, but future's still bright. You got some fun stuff going on. I just really wish they would have solidified that future and really hit some home runs this year to put themselves in a better situation to not only win this division, but maybe make a push at the Super Bowl.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that